Box by White Acre Studio. I'm Cynthia, and I'm getting ready to rip up some paper, which is so much fun. This project is a tissue paper collage, and I'm going to show you what I created today, which is, for me, the essence of spring. I actually live on a street that has some of the cherry blossom trees, and I live near a park that has a literal walkway of the trees. So when I think of spring, I think of these trees. And I'm very, very excited to show you how you can make anything you want out of tissue paper, some glue, and a canvas. So when you open your box, what you're going to find inside is all different colors of tissue paper. So you're going to have a lot of choices. You have saturated colors, you have some prints, and you have some white. And we're going to be talking in a minute about how to use that white with your other colors. You also have a handy dandy little guide to some simple shapes. And the advice that everyone gives is that when you're working, simple shapes are better. You have the brush that you'll use for your glue. You have your glue in a jar, and you'll have a stick. And you're going to want to stir that up a little bit. It will have settled in travel. I'm trying to think if there's anything I'm missing. I think that's it. You have a canvas. And I don't know if you've ever used what I would buy in the store as Mod Podge, but I used to do it when I was a kid. We used to do projects with this. But this is more sophisticated. At the same time that it's sophisticated, it's completely open-ended. So if you were with us when we did the exploding boxes, and we talked about how completely individual that was, you would decorate it the way you wanted to. This is a very similar project. So ultimately, you're going to want to have a theme. You're going to want to know what you want in the end on that canvas, but you're not, I think, going to completely pre-plan how you get there. Because part of the fun is discovering as you go what happens when you layer the tissue paper. I have found, even on my own, that when you go to someplace like the dollar store, there's all kinds of new prints to tissue paper. So one of the really fun things you can do is use the single color, the individual color. You can overlap it and make a new color by overlapping, which is going all the way back to when you were learning how to mix your egg dye. You know, you're going to put this color with this color and get this color. But you also have patterns, so you can start to make choices about how to use the pattern interestingly in whatever you're doing. The other option you have, and you all have scissors, the other option is to actually plan to the point where you want to cut shapes out and have pre-planned shapes, even in your tissue. And that's another complete way to go. So if you decided that you wanted a sign with letters, you could cut those letters with scissors, or you could tear to get to the letters that you want. Today, I want it to be spring, but I don't want to say spring. In other words, I want it to just speak for itself. So the one thing I did do that is different than tissue paper is that I went ahead and cut out of opaque paper the trunk. I wanted the trunk and the branches to show through the layers of the tissue paper. And I think my ultimate goal would be that I'm going to make one of these each season, and I would use a different color palette each time. So the first thing I did was sort through the papers that I was given and pull the colors that I wanted for the cherry tree. So I chose the dark pink, I chose the light pink, I chose like what I would call lilac, really light purple, and then I chose some fun patterned green, so not a plain green, but interestingly there were patterned tissues with leaves on them. And so I did two different things. One thing I did was just colors overlapping, and the other thing I did was try to systematically think where I would want to have some green leaves coming through the picture. And I had a lot of fun. So the first thing I'm going to do, I've already pulled some of the colors I want, is we're going to count how many times the tissue paper sticks to my sweater. Give it a good stir, because basically this is glue and water, and you want the water to be dispersed back through the glue. all right, and you have your brush. And the theory to any decoupaging is that you put glue down once to put down your paper, and then you glue again right over top of it to give it that sheen. And I find that it doesn't really hurt how many times you put the glue on. It just gives you a different texture, and that is totally all up to you. So again, this is not tissue paper, what I'm using. This is, oh my God, I'm gonna show my age. We used to call this oat tat, but they call it scrapbooking paper now. So I'm just putting down my tree root, and I cut it out of 2 different small pieces of paper instead of one big one. So I'm actually going to put it on here because the branches are little, and then I'm going to go up here and get the base of my tree. So we've had a couple crafts that I call fiddly. You have to follow the instructions, you have to go sequentially, and you kind of have to get it right. There's no wrong to this, which is, I guess, one of the things I love about it. So this is a project that you can make as sophisticated as you want, but you could be making one while your kids are making one. Your kids could be ripping up the tissue paper for you. This is just really, I think, screaming for you to have a bunch of people at the table sharing tissue paper and going for it. All right, so I'm going to put a little layer of glue over my tree trunk. I went with traditional black. Our artistic director would have gone much more funky. He would have gone with different colors. He would have mixed colors. But I think that because my goal is ultimately to have all 4 seasons, I want the one thing that doesn't change for me in the sequence to be the trunk, to be the branches. So I have these on, and then my sequence was to start with the dark pink. And so I'm going to layer some dark pink in different places. And as you're working, you can play with the shape of what you've torn. You can play around with how, you're going to have a couple straight edges every once in a while where you want the straight edge of that tissue paper to be. And remember, in the end, very little of it's going to be naked, right? Because you're going to be laying other things over it. So the shapes will take on new form as you layer things over top of them. So I'm going to start by getting a little pink toward all of the branches, the dark pink. And I'm actually going to hold this up so that you can see where we're going. So I'm going to layer from here the light pink and then the light purple. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to use the green differently. So I'm going to grab some light pink. One of the things that might throw you is that the light pink is completely translucent. So you really can layer under it. Don't let that throw you. Don't think, oh, it looks like there's no paper there. It does look like there's paper there. It just looks very different than the dark pink. But when you put it over the branch, it's extremely cool, okay? And one of the things, and I'm gonna bring that up now, that you can do if you're the kind of person who doesn't like this stark black with the tissue paper, is you can use, and you have white, you can use your white tissue paper to soften or tone down any bright color that you have. So one of the things that I did on this one, and I'm just going to give you an example of that, is to use the white, crinkle it up a little bit, and put it, we're going to glue it with texture, if that makes sense. So you're not trying to get all the little folds out this time. And if you think about the trunk of a tree, it's actually really cool that it plays out that way. So I'm going to show you an example of putting the tissue paper, the white, over this dark black. Okay? And again, I'm going to hold this up for you to see. Okay, so the tissue paper, you're still seeing your tree trunk, but it's just not as stark anymore. And you've got some texture in there, which I love. So I'm going to put one more piece of the white on. In the end, we're going to be talking more about options than having you watch me glue all the pieces on, because it really is not skill-based. It's just gluing on. All right, so I'm going to put one more of these on. And it can be layered over again. I mean, you can put other colors over that. I was a non-believer of the white over my tree trunk till I saw it, and now I love it. There you go. And you could do that through the whole tree if that was the effect you were going for. I'm going to jump ahead and show you one more color of just plain colors. And you don't have to be as symmetrical as me. Like I'm like, I want one pink, one light pink, one purple. You can do whatever you want. I do want to show you. So for instance, putting the purple over the dark pink, ultimately what you have is dark pink, light purple, and then two new colors where the purple is over the pink. So you're creating that sense of the blossoms all over the place by just mixing your colors. So I'm going to throw one there, I'm going to throw one there. I'm going to fill up this little hole right here with some light pink. Okay, and always when you've done a patch, you want to go back over. So remember, you're putting glue down, tissue down, and then glue on top of tissue. So that gives you the idea of the solid colors. And then what I did with the patterns is that I tried to actually tear in such a way that it was a discernible leaf, that you could see that it was a leaf. And then I started to play around with the green. And in my kit, I had two different kinds of that. I have, and so I guess you will too, I have these sort of what look viney kind of, and then I have these sort of jungly greens. So the jungle ones I used in real big ways, like foliage on the tree. And like I said, I loved these ones that look a little bit like vines. And I actually tried to keep that vine intact so that you could actually follow the leaf pattern. So I learned the hard way yesterday that some people don't love decoupage, and I don't love those people. Some people, I guess, don't like what I would call collaging, the idea that nothing is symmetrical or pre-planned. But I personally like this form of art in a million different forms, and we're going to talk about at the end, and you've created your canvas, what you can be doing with all those little leftover pieces of paper, because there's so much you can do. All right, so that gives you an idea of putting in the leaves. And then the final thing I did want to show you, and I stole this idea from someone else who had used the actual border, what I would consider a border. So I'm actually going to ask a handy person to give me scissors. This is the one thing I cut instead of, tearing, because I wanted to keep the border. So to me, it looks like lace, but it looks like lace that is floral. And I thought it would look cute to fill in the space at the bottom, almost like the ground, some flowers at the bottom of the tree, and then you're going back over it. Let me get one more border on here. There's two, if you have the same paper I do, you're going to have more than one kind of border, so you can really play around. Ultimately, you could have a border around whatever you're making. It also, because it's symmetrical, would be a great way to make letters, because you could shape your letters out of something that's fairly straight. So if you picture, for instance, cutting a lot of these kind of strips, then you could be making initials or something out of border. And there we go. All right, so I haven't filled in my entire tree, but we're aiming for this ultimately. And when I was thinking about this being a seasonal project, I was thinking, what little fun thing could be there for each season? And my partner in crime here suggested that what we all love about these trees is that the blossoms fall like snow. We're sick of snow by the time they come, and it's the kind of snow we all like. It's like confetti. It's all over the sidewalk. So the final step for the tissue paper part was to turn some of the tissue paper into the tiniest paper pieces of confetti. We're basically just making some confetti. I did this with two colors. I did it with the dark pink and the light pink. And even these are kind of big. I mean, it's going to be what effect you want. And what I did was layer some where they would fall on the ground, like that blanket of petals that we always have. Give you a sense of that, okay? But for me, it's the movement of them. It's that you're walking down the street and they're fluttering over your head, and life is beautiful. So I also wanted to have a couple that were in transit. They're coming down. So it gives you a sense of that, as much or as little as you want. Ultimately, I did some all the way across the bottom. The light pink is subtle, but it's sweet, and then I had some coming down from the trees. So in the final picture, I looked at it and I said, I don't want that background to be solid blue. I don't want it to be solid anything. And I thought, what could I possibly do to just give it a sense that it's not bare canvas? So I'm just gonna go back and do what you would do in the end if your product was finished, to make sure you have Mod Podged everywhere. And I found out that there's a technique, and I'm looking for blue. Do I have it? There it is. This is the blue that was used to create literally what I believe we would call tissue paper paint. So, can I use a brush with glue on it to do this? All right, so I'm gonna get my brush wet. And what you're trying to do is just get the dye to come out of your tissue paper. So you're getting your tissue paper wet, which in real life you would not want this to happen if you were, but it's so cool because you're pulling the dye out of the tissue paper, but you're not actually gluing the tissue paper down. And then you can sponge that around and you can do, again, as much or as little of that blue or whatever you want to use to have a sense of a background. and I'm going to put my tissue paper paint down and just say that I tend to go back over. I do another layer of glue over the whole shebang. But before you do that, you want to make sure you have what you want. Do you have it overlapping? Do you have the colors that you want? Is there some little tiny thing you want to add to that before you add your final touches? But it is that simple to create this collage. So I want to show you a couple completely different kind of ideas. This is so outside of my box, do you know what I mean? Because I would never think to outline certain parts of a letter, but the effect is so cool. So what's been done here is that the letters for spring were torn out and then highlighted with just a Sharpie. Okay, so you have the spring colors. You basically have the same border that I have, but you've got that sort of sublimated spring in there. And I just love that it's not just completely written out. It's not opaque paper. And that's another way to go, but I like that this just adds to the decoupage effect. So I love this. I think it's super. And we were also talking about the fact that you don't have to, necessarily do this kind of work just on the canvas. So you'll get a canvas, and Lord knows you can go buy a bunch of more canvases and, make your series or whatever you want. But this would work well on a notebook cover, a box that you want to use. I used to make collage boxes. So I would get an old shoebox, and I would cut out pictures from magazines that I wanted to image into my life. I'm always going to go to the new age, weird affirmation kind of thing. So I would cut out everything I want. This is what I want this year. And I would glue them onto the box. Then I would Mod Podge over it. I sometimes added personal pictures. And then in that box, I would keep mementos from the year. So in that box would go the cards from that year, the candle from the cake, that kind of thing. Super gift for a kid, right? Here's your age 8 in a box, and you've decoupaged all kinds of cool things on it. Teenagers could do their notebook covers. I think it's almost endless. You can make, I would think, a placemat, right? And then if you wanted to then get it laminated, that gorgeous decoupage collage is there forever, all right? So I'm so inspired by this that I'm also going to leave the camera and grab 2 more things. One is a mug that someone gave me, and if I did this project and wanted to do actual, like you have this template, cut out shapes, I would want to do dogs. Someone gave me a mug that says dog person, and then there's every kind of dog on here. So I would love to find little templates of dogs and make a dog decoupage. And then I would probably, for me personally, use the opaque paper for the letters, but you could do anything you want. You can use packing tape over, under. You can use, can you tell we're ad-libbing here? So you can use packing tape under what you're doing, and it will give it a stained glass effect. So I guess I need to go home and try that as well. And something that I've been doing for a long time, long before we decided to do this, is I make everybody who eats yogurt, and in particular, there's a particular brand of yogurt. May I say the brand name? I like Oui, the French Oui. Because they're just a perfect size. They clearly intended this to be recycled, this glass jar. So every season I get a different tissue paper. You can add glitter to your glue so that when you're done, it sparkles. So I found the most recent springy paper at Dollar Store, whatever your area calls it. So if you think about this, somebody gave me the jar. The tissue paper cost $1, and we have glue, and you add water and you throw some glitter in, and I put candles in them, I put my hair things in them, I throw my jewelry in them. And this is using up all of these tidbits because for me, it's all just torn pieces and tons of overlapping. It's a lot of overlapping. And a lot of mixing of the saturated colors with the light and the patterns. It's really fun, and every single one of them is different. So my guess is you will write in and tell us other ways you have thought to use your tissue paper and to decoupage. And we really want to see those projects when you do them. We saw some exploding boxes that were absolutely extraordinary and personal and wonderful. And this is another one of those projects where we can't wait to see what you think up. It is on the cusp of spring here. We hope you have a most marvelous spring, and we hope your lucky pennies brought you good luck and that you're facing spring with new hope, as we're all, I think, feeling a little more hopeful these days. Thank you so much. This is Cynthia. It's in the box. White Acre Studio. Thank you.